Hello everyone, Master0101 here, and in this update log we'll be going over some of the changes that have happened with HardOps 987_7 to HardOps 987_8, which is a more minor release aiming to fix blank material. Quite a bit has happened between our last update and now, and so I just wanted to do an update log to just kind of catch people up as far as what's going on with HardOps and how to quickly jump in and just get the most out of their experience. As always, I remain proud of the work that has gone into this by the team. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. So here I am in 2.83, and we're using an older version of HardOps 0987_3. And in this example, I just want to show how basically in our control tilde, if we look under bool options, we don't have parent bool shapes on. But if I were to take this cube, select this shape, and just press Q and choose difference, we can now set up our boolean. And basically if I rotate this object, we see that it doesn't take it with it. And the reason is because the parenting isn't set up. So we created this option called late parent that basically will allow you to retroactively parent your cutters to the shape even after the fact, like you're seeing me show here. However, the problem was that this would fail with HardOps, so we'll just place this particular insert from the hop subsets. And basically if we rotate it, we see that the insert does not go along with it, and we could select it and parent it manually, but there's better ways. So if we press Q and we go to operations and we choose late parent, we see that this doesn't work. And so this was considered a bit of a problem and something that we aim to resolve. Another thing that it also wasn't able to take care of as far as late parent was concerned is, let's take this edge in the back and let's just convert it to a curve, but we'll right click and cancel, and then we'll select the shape and just use Boxcutter to just create a quick cut. And I'll press Q and use array, and we could just press V to activate 3D mode. And I'm going to take this, select the curve, press Q, choose curve modifier, press F9, and we can now set up the situation. And basically if we were to try to move the shape, we see that we're not able to get anywhere with it. And if I were to press Q and choose late parent, that also will not help with this cutter because this cutter is parented to another object. And so basically late parent wasn't able to deal with hierarchies that were related to separate objects. So this was something that we aimed to resolve. So just to show it in action, now I'm using HardOps 987.8, and we'll just place our cursor here. And same as before, if we press Control tilde, under our bool options, we don't have any sort of parenting turned on. So if we just set this up, we're now in business with our boolean. We can press Q, try using late parent. We see that late parent will work the way it's supposed to. So now let's try it with that insert. If we were to try to rotate this, we see that the insert stays still. If we press Q and go under late parent, we see that now it's been parented as the count has been increased, and we are now able to rotate that insert. So just to tie off this finale, let's do the same thing we did previously, where I select this edge, control click to select everything in between, and then we just use curve extract, maybe press X to drop it as not having any sort of width to it, and we'll just use line box to create a quick shape. We'll use array to array it out, just my favorite way to array nowadays, and we'll select them both, use curve modifier, and then just use the F9 to set this up. So now, the moment of truth, we press Q, and if we go under operations and choose late parent, we now see that we're able to move this object completely freely. So just showing that we've expanded the capacity of late parent to now support more cases than ever before, maybe even cases you haven't ran into yet, but definitely cases that I consider important enough for us to focus on, like you see here. So if we press Q and we go back to ever scroll, I'm just going to recall this particular cutter, and we'll just bring that over, and I'll press Alt H to bring everything else back. We see that whenever I go to layer 1, everything else is hidden. So let's say I wanted to actually get all my inserts and cutters cleaned up. Well, I can just go under settings and just control click manage, and that will evict everything that's a cutter. And if we click on manage without anything, we can now unify. But we want to make sure that our active collection is the one that we want to unify to. So now if we go under settings and we choose manage, everything has been unified to the collection of collection. And now whenever I press 1, 2, 3, I'm able to jump through them properly. So there's quite a few support tools at your disposal when it comes to managing HardOps and dealing with inserts and keeping all these sort of things under control. Just letting you know that there's additional cases that we're also intent on improving upon. So I'm going to just shift right click, place my cursor here, shift A, add a sphere, and we'll just right click and adjust the size of it. I'll select the object, select the empty, Alt X, press X to reset it, and we'll just mirror this to the other side. And while we're here, let's select this insert, and let's also mirror it across the empty. I almost mirrored it across the object. That would have been incorrect. So let's try that again. Alt X. We want to mirror modifier, mirror it across. So now if we move the object, we see that we're back in a situation where we're not able to move this object freely. So this is another reach of late parent outside of the bounds of what it was designed for, but now is something additionally supported. So we'll go in, use late parent, and now we see that we've actually parented things that are not cutters to this, and we're now able to move this object freely. So just letting you know that we're still working on expanding late parent to be the best retroactive parenter that you can use for dealing with things after the fact, where you've realized you may have made a mistake with your parenting and want to deal with it in a more automated fashion. Just know that we're there for you. So a popular request is, hey man, is there a way to help us clean up our scenes, help us clean up cutters, help us remove unused cutters and get rid of garbage? And after a bit of pondering, I believe that we were able to come up with a solution that may be able to work for everyone. So in this version of HardOps, introducing Purify. Purify is part of Manage. So if we press Q and we go under Settings, we can see that basically alt-clicking will activate Purify. We also see that in the spirit of Manage, our tooltip is cut short. Basically, Purify cutters that are unused. I guess that's as linear as it gets. So if we press Alt-W, we switch over to Hops tool, which means that if I hold Control and I move my mouse around, you can see me highlighting the various cutters that comprise this shape. Let's say that we wanted to begin applying some of them. Well, the easiest way to do some applying is to just go in and use Everscroll. So if we use Everscroll, we can actually roll the modifier down to the level that we want to apply. So here I am around modifier number 12. Let's just control click. That will basically apply to visible modifiers and leave the previous modifiers unapplied. So basically we applied half of our modifier stack, which we can see. Another thing I also wanted to show is that our cutter collection has some cutters called extraction. Extractions, as of previous versions, cutters that are based off of extractions are no longer named extractions. That was something we talked about basically, I believe, during Boxcutter 715. But now Purify will ignore extractions and no longer remove them, which shows why it was important for us to not name cutters extractions, because we don't want cutters to possibly be omitted from future systems like the ones we're about to discuss. Anyways, enough talk. Let's go under Settings and Alt-click Manage, and we see that half of the cutters were removed. These cutters were found to be unassociated with any meshes in the scene at this time, and therefore were removed. Let's actually go ahead and just Smart Apply to just apply everything. We see that everything's been applied. There's only 2 modifiers left on this object. What are we going to do with all these cutters? Well, let's go under Settings again, Alt-click Manage, and we've now purified 7 meshes. So you might be wondering, hey, what's these last 7 meshes? Well, I'll probably use some here. So let's take this and just run a Smart Apply, and then go under Settings and Alt-click Manage. We see that that eliminated just a few more. If we look at this thing, we see that there's some cutters actually associated with this as well. There's a Boolean intersect at the very end. So let's actually select everything, even things that aren't supposed to be selected. And a way to test everyone's sanity is to just run Smart Apply. There shouldn't be an error for this. Even if I select lights, even if I select collection instances, I'm just a weird person. I like to support lazy selection. So if we press Q and we go under Settings, we can Alt-click Manage, and we see that now every cutter has been purified, and that's because every cutter operation has been applied. I knocked something off my desk, ignore that. But now you see that we were able to purify our scene. If we were to press 2 and go to our cutters collection, we can press Alt-H, and we see that our extractions are still there. It's important for us to never remove our extractions, for you may want to reuse them later, use KitOps to convert them into cutters, or whatever the case may be. Extractions are something that I deem to be important. In fact, this extraction appears to be a simplified version of this extraction. But in any case, just know that HardOps now has the ability to purify, located under Settings and Manage. So in case you ever forget what this does, just give it a click, and you could always just press F9 and look at the various options that are here. The only option that's not able to be conjured via keystroke right now is collect, which was one of the least popular operations as far as manage goes. But basically, just letting you know that we now have added the possibility for users to be able to purify in addition to evict, unifying, and removing things that are supposed to not be there. When it comes to HardOps, our goal is to get something working right, just working well, being the way it's supposed to be, and then from there just exponentially adding on to it and attempting to take it to that next level. So array is one of those things. I'll just draw a box, shift it to live, and if we press Q, we can use array v2. Array v2 is a little bit of a story in its own, because it's the basically the third version of array that we've created. However, it's a v2 of basically the ST3 series of arrays that we've attempted to add inside of HardOps, and it's gone through its set of trials and tribulations, and even the victory of having 3D and 2D as a way to deal with things compared to the more traditional methods was something that I considered a bit of a victory. However, one of the comments that I received talking about it in the past was, what about tablet users? What about tablets? What about using it on a touch device? And this was a comment that stuck with me. It was something that I pondered for a while and wanted to come up with something that would both expand on all of our tools going forward, but also allow us to continue on in the same vein of working fast and just doing operations and finishing without having to think about a whole lot of stuff afterwards. Just get in, set up your operation, get your distance in there, and close it, is the initial goal with Array. However, if we jump over to the later version of Blender, where I can just make a new file, we can begin talking about where Array is now gone. So, I'll just draw a shape using line box, I guess, and we'll press Q and use Array v2. And you see that Array is pretty much the same as it was just a moment ago when I was showing it. However, if we press tab, we see that we're able to pause the operation, which is exactly the same as I was just showing, except now we see that there's this dot off on the left. If we click on this dot will expand into a new type of UI that we're calling .UI. And inside of here is a plethora of things to make your life a lot easier. For example, double clicking will allow it to show up arrows on screen, and you can just click these in order to gracefully move your operation. And that is to not say that you can just click it and it will flash, meaning you can now use numerical input. So numerical input is one of our goals that we've always wanted to try to implement. However, to get something that's both organic for the type of users that we are and also the users that run into us, it is always a balance. So if we hold shift and we scroll, we see that we're able to do fine incremental adjustments. If we hold control, we see that we're able to move something a lot more accelerated. If we click on the 1, we can actually set the array to be at a perfect 1, and we can even just go back and just begin rolling the wheel in order to begin adjusting it again. At the bottom, you can choose what active axis is being adjusted. You can choose how much count is being added to it. You can even flip the current array on the fly just by coming in and tapping this. If you wanted to add a different array, all you have to do is just click the plus, and then from here you just begin rolling the wheel and you're able to begin adding to this particular array as well. So we've added almost everything that you're normally able to do with hotkeys, but we've tried to make it a button-centric workflow for you to be able to click. In fact, even the option of exiting with empty, which is one of my favorites, is able to be done. So you can just click on the exit with empty, click on the X, and now we have 2 different empties that we're able to move in order to adjust this grid array that we set up. And the interesting thing about empties is that with our empties, if you rotate them, you'll see it adjust the count. So you can even continue adjusting the array even outside of the array. And this is just the rough broad strokes of this aspect of array. I'll be doing a video going more in depth on it in the future. However, just know for now, if you go into array, you can now press tab, jump over to the dot, and begin adjusting things using the dot inside of HardOps Array v2. So we'll be seeing this new UI system continuing further throughout hops as time goes on. But for now, it is something that is currently attached to Array v2, Cloth, and the new Accu-shape v2, which we'll be talking about next. So Accu-shape's purpose is simply to assist with getting things to a very particular scale. So we can select this object, and if we press Q, we can go under Accu-shape and basically change our units over to inches and set up what we want this to be. So I could just type in 27 and we see that the length and width were adjusted to proportionally fit the amount that was typed in, meaning that if I press spacebar, this object has now been scaled down to be 27 inches high, and everything else has been scaled to fit it accordingly with keeping those values. And that is basically the purpose of Accu-shape. However, if we were to press Q and go under Accu-shape again and really take a look at what we have here as far as a system, besides the help being a little excessive and us having just this UI that just was getting a little bit out of control, it was pretty simple. However, we felt it could be better. So as previously mentioned, the dot UI has now taken over for Accu-shape. So we can now select our shape, press Q, and we can choose Accu-shape V2. With Accu-shape V2, you'll now have an anchor set up off the bat that you can deal with. So for this, we want to set our anchor to actually be the front face, which means that any scaling that we do will be towards this front face. We could also change it to the back face if needed, which basically will highlight that particular face. We can even click and drag these faces if we want to freely move it, but for the purposes of this example, we actually want to keep everything one-to-one. So I'm just going to change from feet to inches, and I can just click on this. We see that it's flashing, meaning that if I type in 27, we've now scaled it to 27 on the back face. We press space and we've now scaled it down. So with this object now being scaled, it's a lot easier for us to deal with things whenever it comes to Accu-shape. Of course, the same edge cases have still been supported, like the ability to select and redraw. For example, I can go in and just press R and just basically draw a different set of bounds for this object, and by pressing spacebar I can set it to those bounds as well. In fact, if I delete this lattice, you'll see that it actually falls back to the previous scale loading amount that was set, which was us setting this to be 27 inches. But just letting you know that improvements have been made with Accu-shape in this version of HardOps, and in the event that you want to revert back to a previous version, you can always just press Ctrl K to bring up your HardOps preferences, and under the Properties tab, you can change Accu-shape to either be Classic or V2 just on the fly. So that's really just scraping the surface when it comes to Accu-shape, but I'll definitely be coming back doing a more focused video on it as time goes on. HardShape is one of my favorite features in HardOps, and under the opt-ins you can actually opt into an experimental version of HardShape called 1.5, which is kind of a recursive visit of our previous work in HardShape before V2 made things a little messy, which is the version I'm using nowadays. Some improvements have been made with 1.5, where if you press QOT, you can go in and begin adjusting your shape like normal, where you would roll the wheel to choose which shape you want. You could roll to the shape that you would like. For example, I have cylinder. I can press E to turn off equalize because no one wants an ovalized cylinder. And normally you would press S in order to adjust the scale. However, adjusting the scale in this way was something that I found to be unsatisfactory, especially when the thing I mainly want to do is adjust the diameter. So new to this version is pressing A will allow you to adjust the diameter of a cylinder, allowing you to quickly slap cylinders in places like you see me doing here. In addition to this, pressing Shift W will toggle between wire shaded and wire solid display in the event that you want to draw a shape and use it as a wire. For example, if we press QOT, we can roll the wheel until we get a plane and just place our plane at the very top. Press Shift W to just have it as a wire shaded object. And now we have a quick plane that we can use with active only inside of Boxcutter to use as a jump off point for orientation when it comes to cutting this particular shape. It's still a very strange edge case, but it's still one that comes up where sometimes you want to insert a shape in a wired state, or you want to insert a cylinder but adjust only the diameter of it. So I'm proud to announce that HardShape in this latest version of HardOps now supports adjusting the diameter in addition to setting shapes as a wire. So the cloth UI is something that we've also sought to improve over the course of the last few updates. To show what it used to look like before now, it was basically just a window that you would move around. Pretty much the same thing here. I'm able to just roll on my shrink, roll on the pressure in order to adjust the amount of pressure that's happening with this particular simulation. Just a real easy, fun, interactive way to have fun with cloth. And in addition to that, you can just click the check to apply. Really nothing major there, just basically a cloth modal. If we minimize that, we can jump over to the latest version of Blender. I'll just set up a subsurf on this object and then just press Q and go under modifier and cloth, and now we see that the UI has been made a little bit smaller, a little more compressed, and we're now able to go in and begin simulating. However, to make it fair, let's actually lower the subdivs down to 1, just so Blender actually has a fighting chance here. We see our cloth in a timely fashion, so we can go in and adjust our pressure and our shrink in order to exponentially add more or less cloth, of course reducing the pressure in order to allow it to poof downwards. Just a fun way to get in there and just get started playing with the cloth in HardOps. In fact, we'll press spacebar, Control tilde, go under general options and set this to smooth, and we can even put another subsurf on it afterwards. And since the simulation is still live, we can still go back in time to find the absolute frame that we want. And then of course the same functionality that we had with cloth previously, where you could go in and just choose apply and then check the box in order to apply all the modifiers leading up to cloth, and then applying it afterwards in order to apply your simulation is still possible. So just letting you know that we're still working on improving the UI, making it even more small and unified, and supporting a 4K displays. When it comes to customizing Blender, or even your preferences, it's as easy as just going to edit and just loading your preferences. And from here, you can go into whatever add-on you choose and customize it to your liking. However, we've always wanted to be able to do this from the 3D view. And for that reason, under the hotkeys, we can see that there is the Control K preference key map helper. So if I go in and press Control K, we see that there's now a pop-up. First of all, letting me know that my HardOps is out of date, letting me know that I can go to any of these 3 markets and update it or learn how to update. But also I can adjust any of the preferences of HardOps on the fly just by going in and adjusting this without even having to bring up the preferences window. But one of the things that always kind of irked me about the preferences pop-up is that it doesn't have the preferences for Boxcutter. You know, both tools should probably be supported in this handy dandy little preference pop-up. And so I'm happy to announce that in the latest version of HardOps, if you were to press Control K, you now have the preferences for both HardOps and Boxcutter showing up on the fly. So as the preferences for Boxcutter gets aligned and adjusted and expanded upon, you'll now be able to pop them up in the 3D view just like you would for HardOps, allowing you to be able to easily customize and set up your experience and even save your preferences on the fly if needed. So just letting you know that now the preferences with Control K now supports loading of Boxcutter preferences as well. As of the last release, I was disappointed to find out that blank material was experiencing crashes in Blender 2.93. And right now I'm in Blender 2.93 and we're using the latest release 0.987.8. So if we were to just take these cubes and just duplicate them over and over and just create a whole bunch, we can select all of these, and if we control click blank material, we've generated these blank materials. And if we control click blank material again, we see that Blender has just ended our career. Here I am back in LTS, so while we have LTS up, let's give it a try. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to duplicate all of these cubes, and we're just going to add blank materials, and let's just duplicate it so there's a lot more of them. And I'm just going to select everything, control click blank material, 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 and we're just going to keep doing this for a moment. And so we see that while it pretty much crashed immediately in the other Blender, this particular Blender is a little bit more resilient to us just generating a bajillion blank materials on the fly. In fact, I think the notification should probably say how many times it generated a blank material at least, because it's generating so many blank materials right now, yet it's unable to crash. And the key with actually causing this to crash is getting it to generate blank materials before it actually generates all the thumbnails in this Alt-M list. So we've been really experimenting with ways to get this crash and identify it and trigger it. And it came down to us removing the 0 user materials and us being able to remove them before it actually finishes generating these thumbnails. So just to demonstrate in action, we'll just minimize this where I'm back in Blender 2.93, because there's always a Blender underneath my crashing Blender. Unless there isn't, then you guys see my wallpaper. But now we can just take our cubes and just duplicate them. Now keep in mind, as long as you're in 2.93, this issue may be going on until the Blender Foundation receives a bug report. However, just like we were talking about our Control K preferences pop-up, there's now an option for material preview icons, where if you turn it off, pressing Alt M will no longer try to generate icons, and that means that you can now go in and just generate blank materials like mad, and it will no longer crash. In fact, I tested it for quite a while because I was so skeptical. I was like, look, let's just let it be, let's just follow bug report and call it a day. However, the whole team seemed so adamant about getting in and just fixing this blank material issue that now I'm able to sit here and talk to you guys about how blank material has been fixed, at least for this point in time, just because it will no longer generate material preview icons if you go in and disable that as an option. However, let's go in and turn it back on, just because, you know, we never learn, right? And let's just control click blank material, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like a game. My record is 23. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And it's kind of a sometimey thing too, where you may not even be able to get the crash to happen, but it's definitely something that, you know, was irking us, because we never want these tools to be crashing, and whatever it takes to get them to be stable is important. However, unchecking the F9 box of removing 0 users was not going to be a very good option, because then you would have ended up with every blank material that you replaced sitting as residual data in your blend file, possibly bloating it and just making it very extra. So the removing blank users is definitely important, but we go in and we generate again and we see that it's able to work, and let's try generating them again, and we see that it's still able to work. So if you're experiencing issues with it crashing, just know that you can press Control K to bring up your preferences in order to go in and just uncheck generating the previews. In fact, Blender's kind of choking a little bit in the background. Is probably about to end my career. And we'll press Alt M again, generate some random blank materials, just because, like I said, I'll never learn. And let's just press Control K to bring up our preferences, and just let you know, if you experience crashes, just unchecking this should assist with that situation. In closing, I just want to say that I'm always proud of the work that goes into each and every one of these releases. There's always some sort of bug fixes that are having to be done as far as maintenance to keep this product working at its best, but we're always there around the clock to try to keep these things under check. It's really easy to just kind of let these bug reports rack up, and, you know, it ends up with us looking at an unstable product, which is something that I never want to see. So around the clock, we are perpetually committed towards ensuring that this product is not only running optimally, but performing the way it's supposed to. I mean, even though 2.93 isn't the official version right now, I spend all of my time in the latest version of Blender, just to ensure that our tools are always working. So seeing questions like, hey, does it work with this version of Blender, or does it work with that version of Blender? You know, the purpose of these videos is to show that all the way from LTS all the way to alpha, we seek to have our products working in an optimal state. And if they aren't, then that's something that we're definitely going to be checking into. But, you know, Blender is Blender, so sometimes they get us. Sometimes, you know, everything's so stable for a period of time, we think that it'll just go on forever. But just letting you know that, you know, the fight against bugs, it continues. And I'm happy to have people with me to, you know, make that fight a little bit less lonely, because, you know, fighting bugs is just an endless battle. You know, even in my head, I'm just imagining just being overwhelmed by roaches and just being torn to shreds, you know, over all the issues that could possibly happen, and get tripped up with the various changes that happen with Blender over time. But I remain Hop's biggest fan, and I'm proud of all the work that goes into it. So in closing, that'll wrap up this update log, and I'll see you guys next time.